Our third panelist this morning is Cal Armstrong from OAME, and we're going to be learning a little bit more about ChatOAME. Essentially, what's been learned from 6 months of AI conversations with mathematics teachers. So Cal Armstrong brings a wealth of experience in math education, offering a unique perspective on how artificial intelligence is reshaping classroom practices. Through his work with ChatOAME, he's been engaging with educators across Ontario, exploring the transformative potential of AI tools in supporting curriculum goals, enhancing inclusivity, and addressing diverse teaching needs. In this session, Cal will weave together insights from 50 years, maybe even more than 50 years, of OAME's flagship publications, the Abacus and the Gazette, with emerging trends in math education, including the integration of Indigenous perspectives, universal design for learning, and high-impact instructional strategies. He'll also reflect on how AI can empower educators to navigate the complexities of modern teaching while upholding ethical standards and privacy. Let's give a warm welcome to Cal.
Okay, so this is a much better situation than last weekend when I'd just done 8 hours of parent-teacher interviews and then had to jump onto the CMS meeting to present. So thank you for letting me present in a more relaxed space and environment. So just for those folks who haven't yet encountered it, let me just, come on, click, there we go. ChatOAME is an AI agent, so it's just a chat bot, for lack of a better term, that's been designed by the folks at the OAME. It is not used by students, so students can't get into it unless they actually become an OAME member, and that's unlikely to happen. And it is also anonymous, so that when people engage with the chatbot, we have no idea who they are. And that was a deliberate design choice. For one, we wanted to make sure that teachers were able to ask questions without fear of anyone going, oh, geez, Cal didn't know that? He should know that by now. And so we want to make sure that they can ask them with complete liberty and know that no one will ever judge them for asking that particular question. And it's been interesting. I've read through every single prompt that has ever gone through ChatOAME, and it's interesting the questions that educators do ask. It's curious what they know, what they don't know, and what they perhaps know incorrectly. But anyway, it has caused a minor problem because it's anonymous. It's really tough to interview people using ChatOAME because I don't know who they are. So much of the content that you'll see in the next few minutes is from people who have been beta testers, who've self-identified, and who have been able to engage in conversation with, so that we can sort of draw out some ideas of what's actually occurring behind the scenes. Just very briefly on me, not the focus here. I am a current math teacher. I got 5 classes every day. And as you can see, I didn't remove that, but I had done about 6 or 7 hours of parent-teacher conferences the day of the CMS. If you want to track down the technological part of what we did behind the scenes, that's at my own blog at onenoteschool.com. And I've tried to put some pedagogical stuff on LinkedIn. It's been very difficult to decide where to post content of a developing situation. Social media is kind of bifurcated, and it's been problematic on where to actually share information. And I believe this presentation is up on the CMS website, and if it's not, I can certainly post it elsewhere. Brief timeline. This started back in January of 2023. I was in a meeting with Microsoft, and I realized that it was really corporate interests that were driving AI agents and AI chatbots. And it became problematic for me as an educator that I wanted to make sure that the educator voice was present when people were engaged with AIs. And so after a bit of rumination, I sent a message off to the board of directors. I happen to be on the board as a representative of ISOMA. And they said, well, you know what, this is a developing field. Let's take the summer and think about it, do your research, and come back and see what we think. And so sure enough, we came back after the summer. They said, yep, go ahead. And so we started development. It was a crazy time in AI. Things were changing really rapidly. They're not even changing as fast now. There was really changing fast last fall. And so after several iterations in end of November, so basically where we are right now, we sort of shared the first bit with the beta testers. And then in May, we opened it up to everyone. And we're hitting about 6,000 conversations over the past year. And as I said, I've read them all, so it's all quite interesting. What's actually happening? Well, we collected 50 years of, and I think Michael's correct, I think we're now at 51 years of the Abacus and the Gazette, so our elementary journal and our secondary journal. And we took all of them because they contain a lot of information. And it's all been peer reviewed, it's all been edited by MathEd professionals. And so that's all within the brain, so to speak, of ChatOAME. We also included all the other things that OAME has written about. So we have policy statements on technology use. We have equity documents. We have all the other mathematical contents that have been created through the OAME projects. That is all within the content of the knowledge base. We included growing success. Now, folks may know that the ministry has put out feelers about what we should do to change growing success, but it's currently the document that drives assessment and evaluation within the province. So everything that goes through the ChatOAME conversation, it's been specifically required to look at it through the lens of what's in growing success. We also included High Impact Instructional Practice in Mathematics, a book by the ministry, not as well known amongst math educators, but it is included within that lens that we want to make sure that things are being done in a way that is current with Ontario MathEd perspectives. We snagged everything we could from the ministry website that was public. Universal, same thing with Universal Design for Learning. That's been a current focus, and we wanted to make sure that it was responding to educator needs. We have grabbed what I curiously call pivotal math ed, and right now that's often a personal judgment, including in terms of what to include within the knowledge base, and is growing. And I really appreciate folks giving feedback, saying, you know what, here's a great article that people should have read. We want to make sure that that's included within that reservoir of knowledge. And if you happen to read on LinkedIn sort of what the pillars were that we used to construct ChatOAME, one of them was including Indigenous awareness. And it's a real challenge. And I go into it elsewhere about how do you incorporate a knowledge that is land and family based when you're dealing with a mathematical structure that is probabilistic, it's driven by algorithm, it's stochastic. And so how do you merge those two? And we're doing it imprecisely. I was about to use the word improperly. I'm not sure I want to use that. I would likely say imprecisely, that it's a melding of two interpretations that don't meld well together. It's clashing gears, so to speak. And so we're working on that. And I think all of this should be seen as very much a work in progress. And we want to make sure we at least don't do things that are damaging. So we put all that together, and the imagery I use is as a from my grade 11 physics class, a lens. And when a teacher, an educator asks a question of ChatOAME, it first goes through everything that we put within that lens about Ontario mathematics education. And it takes that and it pulls out the most important pieces relevant to that educator's question and sends it off to OpenAI. We use the backdoor to OpenAI, so it doesn't have as many filters, it doesn't have as many drivers that the public-facing ChatGPT uses. So it gets a more, for lack of a better term, honest answer from OpenAI, including all of the content we've just grabbed from OAME's knowledge base. And then it puts it back through the lens. And I like the idea of that refraction. It's bending the light waves towards Ontario, towards the perspective of the OAME mission and vision. And at the very end, it regenerates and says, okay, based on everything I've just told the teacher, what's a good question I can ask the teacher to move them forward? So at the end of every reply, there's a question that says, okay, teacher, now how do you want to think about this as a result of what I've just told you? Now, in the presentation at CMS, I had an excellent educator, and I apologize, I don't remember her name, but she wanted to make sure that we weren't just grabbing everything we could without acknowledging where it came from. And just yesterday, the CBC reported that they and other media outlets within Canada were suing ChatGPT, OpenAI, because they are scraping without regard every bit of content that those media producers created. And she brought legitimate concerns that that was what ChatOAME was doing. And so I I did my best to reassure her that our goal was not that. We only train it on data that is either owned and produced by OAME, ministry documentation that is publicly available, content from the unions based on their perspectives. The National Council, no, sorry, the National Center on Truth and Reconciliation has publicly available documentation and journal articles that are accessible through the Ontario College of Teachers. So when I say pivotal MathEd research, it's only things that I've actually taken from the Ontario College of Teachers library that every Ontario math teacher with the certification has access to. I realize there's a small portion of OAME members that are likely not OCT members, but I use a phrase from my math career, it's vanishingly small. And so I take that from that ethical perspective. So we do want to make sure that we are valuing the content that is produced by math educators from across Ontario and indeed across Canada and outside. And we don't want to just be scraping it randomly without that acknowledgement. So this is what it looks like. It looks like any other chatbot you've likely ever interfaced with. One thing we want to do is make sure that people give us feedback. It's really tough to get feedback. And so if you ever want to ask me a question about anything, please use the email. I'm happy to use it. And at the end of every reply, there's also a little thumbs up, thumbs down button that allows you to give feedback generally that way. It is the only space that should you want to give a comment, you can optionally put in your email if you want to say, you know what, you really need to contact me about this. And that has to do with things that perhaps the AI has generated a response that could be perceived as offensive. And we really don't want to ever, have that happen. And so if that ever happens, please do let us know. It is anonymous. I've said that. And we make it very clear we don't track anything within the system. It's open to research though. So every prompt and every reply, we do want to make sure that we can use it as OAME, the designers, use it to improve the system. But also if a MathEd researcher wants to say, okay, well, how are elementary school teachers using an AI agent? We can pass on the prompts and replies to that researcher to analyze the situation that way. Always use your professor of judgment with any AI, let alone ChatOAME. And it now has the ability to analyze images. Not a lot of folks have used it, but it's been interesting to see someone uploaded a picture of a rubric the other day and said, could you improve this rubric? And it's nice that teachers no longer have to key in all of that information. They can now just take a picture with their phone, drop it in ChatOAME, and allow the AI to do the heavy lifting. It does have pre-constructed prompts. We do that again to let the AI do the heavy lifting for the teacher. As we'll see in a minute, the more information you can give, the better. So if we've done all the research to create what should be a good thin slicing situation, you don't have to type all that information in to make sure that the AI agent responds in a good way. We do have a guide. You're welcome to have a chance to read that over. We try to use bit.lys that are at least recognizable. So bit.ly/ChatOAME guide. I will point out we do have a series of prompts we've snagged from the AI and sort of given some feedback on how they might have been improved or what they did well to try to move people along in their use of AI. If you want to try and not listen to me, you're welcome to do that. I kept the bit.ly open from the CMS weekend. So if you're sitting there going, hey, he's kind of dull, you can go to bit.ly/CMS weekend, work through the AI yourself, and then come back in about, I think I have about 10 minutes left, and then we can finish off with what Mr. Frankfurt has. So the story thus far. The first learning I had was we rolled this out, and it has repeated every time I've presented it to educators, is that everyone wants to Google, and we've got a hill to climb there. People approach it, and they just type in what they would type in for Google. And that really doesn't work. Because when you do that, the AI doesn't know any kind of context of how it should respond. So a financial literacy really was entirely wide open. And so the AI does try to, coax the user to give us some more information to get a better reply. But often I'll see a prompt that's really appropriate for Google. And clearly the response, it tried its hardest, but it just can't read the AI user's mind about what the user actually wants. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that the ChatOAME is coaxing that information out of the user, but the more we can get away from just typing in nouns, the better. And that's one of the reasons why we've had those buttons created, so that when they type exponential functions lesson, if they hit the lesson button, it pulls in a huge, for lack of a better term, is a massive prompt that talks about lesson design in an Ontario context. And so when they hit the button and then type in exponential function lesson, it adds a whole bunch of background information to the prompt that gets then sent off to the AI agent. And that is very helpful. So the more folks can use those buttons, give us feedback on those buttons if they don't like what they get, the better their responses are going to be. The other thing we've added is a pop-up. So if you type in fewer than 7 words, it says, hey, you got to add more than that. You've got to give us more to work on so we know how to best provide the reply to you. And so that's one of the things we're trying to do is sort of train, for lack of a better term, train the users to be more explicit in what they actually want. So if your initial use is only an attempt to Google something, we want to make sure that people are moving towards making it a conversation. I'm trying not to use the word prompt because that really brings them back to Google. So in all of my metaphors, I'm saying you're sitting across from another teacher, and how would you talk to them? You wouldn't just blurt out exponential lesson. No, you say, I've got this grade 11 class. They're working on exponentials. They're really struggling with this aspect of exponential lessons. How would I deal with that situation? And with providing that, it allows the ChatOAME to create a much better response in your situation. And I have a really great example. I've got a beta user who just uses it to the maximum. She completely describes her class, what she needs, how she needs it, and what she's really looking to do. A lot of text on the screen right now. You don't have to read it. It's just her setting the scene about her class. Now, the good thing is we added the microphone. So if you don't want to sit there and type, you can click the microphone and actually engage in a conversation with ChatOAME. It doesn't speak back because we don't think speaking back math is going to be a good idea, but it allows you to accelerate your ability to get information into the system. So that option is there as well. If you want to read that particular beta tester's prompts in which she does describe her class and engages quite deeply with ChatOAME, it is available. It's a really interesting conversation about how she goes through setting up the scene and responding to ChatOAME's replies. Often when I read the prompts, they ask, they get, it stops. That's not the way you would treat sitting across from another teacher drinking a cup of coffee. You would ask the question, they would give you a response. You go, yeah, I really don't like that idea. Could you try something else? And people are really not doing that with AI agents. And they've really got to step up their game. They've got to bring in their natural sense of, I want something more or better. And so when they engage with it and say, you know what, I didn't like that, I like that, keep that, but make sure you change that. We would really like to see more of that. And we're not sure how we can sort of engage with the user to coax them to do that in a better way. Second thing we've learned, it really was set up to be a Vygotskian, more knowledgeable other. That was the original goal. If you look back on LinkedIn and my writings there, that really was the goal. And we really think we've succeeded in that. When we talk with all the beta testers, they say, you know what, I'm learning things, I'm seeing things I hadn't thought before. It's bringing me to do different things that I would have done normally. And that's what we really wanted to see. We wanted to make sure that there was this theme of Indigenous knowledge that was being presented. It's not right yet, but we want to make sure that it's present in the conversation. And the more we can do to improve that, that's certainly on our path. But the path is made by walking, and we have to take that first step. It's good to hear that they're being critical of what they are reading. We don't want them to just take it and run. We want to say, hey, where is this coming from? How do I know it's actually correct? So this has been really great feedback from our beta testers. And the only problem is these beta testers are those people who are willing to put themselves out there in an unusual situation and try things. How do we now get to the teacher who is less comfortable, who is way too busy, and needs to be able to sort of find a way to start using a tool like ChatOAME? Not sure how to solve that problem yet. Third, AI is not particularly creative. I've read 6,000 prompts and replies. I've seen it all before for the most case. It does have a few situations where it does create things I haven't seen before. I don't know everything. But I've taught 30 years, I've seen a lot of the stuff that it's created. It's regenerating things I've seen before. It sometimes does a really nice job. It brings in context I may not be familiar with, but it's doing stuff that I've seen before. And so on the right-hand side, rather, is a problem that I made up, not created by a AI. I was working on rational expression, rational functions, and I wanted to create a problem for the kids. Now, it helped me with the idea of marginal cost. That's fine. But the situation where I'm a motorcyclist, you can tell from back here, helmet hair is not something I deal with, but I did when I was younger. And so bringing that context in was not something that AI would necessarily do. So it's good for creating stuff we've seen before. It's not really good at that really personalized, contextualized content that really a good teacher really wants to bring into the classroom. It doesn't do images well yet. It's working on it. It's trying really hard. That was his first attempt at tangrams, completely useless. So I nudged it and tried to get a little bit better. No, not quite. And you can sort of see how AI works. It tries to pull ideas that's within its knowledge, and it just doesn't get it quite right, because that's what a tangram set should look like. So working on that. Again, it's only been a year, and the improvement we've seen in mathematics and with image production has been remarkable from a technological point of view. From a user point of view, it's still not there. But the more we feed it, the better it will eventually become. And lastly, we wanted to make sure that it was dealing with privacy and ethical issues as best it can. We try to do that by maintaining it behind the OAME membership wall. So all OAME members follow a sort of a code of conduct, just being an Ontario educator. But we also want to make sure that what we see is held within some strict level of privacy. So we do have a privacy policy. We do rely on the mathematics educator's own professional responsibility. They should not be putting in student names. And for the most part, I've yet to see a complete student name. I've seen Johnny and Timmy and Susie and all that. I haven't seen a complete student name. But we do know, from research, that it only takes 3 or 4 pieces of information to actually pinpoint who you are and what you're doing. And so avoiding use of school board names, avoiding use of school names, teacher names, and so on, the less personal information you can use, the better. On our side, the only thing we use it for, the prompts and replies, are for our own research. And should another researcher want to research, we would give them a curated set of information. We wouldn't just give them wholesale. For one, there's also our testing data in there, and we want to make sure we don't share that because it would pollute the data. But also we want to make sure that we don't accidentally pass on a student name or a teacher name to a researcher. And that privacy policy is in the guide. And lastly, we've tried a whole bunch. We've tried to keep up with the improvements that's going on with AI. We've added LaTeX support. It used to be you never saw the math. It had to go through a processing. It's now immediately visible. Technical aspect, the context window has increased. That just means we can put more stuff into every single request. And the more you can put in, the more precise response you can get back. As I mentioned, we've added images, so it now can see, for lack of a better term. And the mathematics has moved from about 80% correct when we started a year ago to about 98% correct, which has been awesome. All right, that's it for me. There's the guide. There's the 2 blogs that I've been trying to post stuff on. And we are on TikTok and Instagram in an effort to reach teachers who are no longer on Twitter. Thank you, folks.